After a great deal of speculation and debate, the Rory Gallagher auction finally came and went at Bonhams in London on Thursday the 17th of October. The hottest piece, of course, was Rory's iconic 1961 Fender Stratocaster. That was lot number 62, which we'll get to shortly. But first, let's check out some other prices from this landmark blues rock sale at Bonhams. Any prices I mention will include the buyer's premium. First on the block was this 1940s lap steel guitar, for which someone paid £12,800. Next up was this very pretty antique Italian mandolin, which sold for £11,520. Lot number 3 was a highlight, a really nice Martin mandolin from 1942, serial number A17296. It was used primarily for live performances of Going to My Hometown. The next lot was a Swedish guitar, a Bjarten acoustic, serial number 8164. This one sold for £11,520. Lot number 5 was a 12-string Harmony Sovereign model H1270 from the 1960s. Rory bought this guitar in November 1972 from Take 5 Musical Instruments in London. On the day, it sold for £10,240. Another 12-string was next up. This was a Stellar Harmony H912. Also from the 1960s, this one fetched £11,520. Lot 7 was another highlight. This was a beautiful Martin D35 acoustic from 1968. Serial number 254568. This one sold for £102,000. A group of harmonicas with a holder was what was on offer for lot number 8. All made by Hohner, with 7 blues harp and 2 pro harp, and all but 2 in cases. These sold as a group for £5,760. Did you know that Rory was also an accomplished saxophone player, and lot number 9 was his Mark IV Selmer alto sax from 1959. It sold for £10,240. Lot number 10 was this National Triolean resonator from 1930. This was another highlight of the sale, and it fetched £95,650. Another National came up after that, and this one was a Resophonic R1 Resoelectric electric guitar from 1991. This one made £7,040. Staying with the resonators, lot 12 was a Continental CS-N resonator guitar from 1993, and it made £16,640. Lot 13 was a National Dynamic lap steel guitar from 1951, and this one made £5,376. The next lot was a Supro dual-tone electric guitar from 1957. It sold for £11,520. The next lot, lot 15, was a Guiatone LG-60B electric guitar from 1959, and it sold for £6,400. A Silvertone came up next, and this was from 1959, an electric, and this one achieved £7,680. Lot number 17 was a Burns Viol RP1 Roy Plummer Super Streamline Electric from 1959, and it sold for £6,400. Lot 18 was a Burns Bison from 1964, and this one sold for £7,680. Lot number 19 was a Dan Electro 3021 Shorthorn Electric from 1960. There's another famous player who uses one of these. This one sold for £19,200. Lot 20 was a Rickenbacker Combo 400 electric from 1957. The price achieved for this one was £14,080. An Epiphone Coronet was up next. This one from 1963 made £14,080. Something a bit different for lot number 22. This was a green flight case stenciled Rory Gallagher band. It sold for £14,080. Lot number 23 was another of the highlights. This was Rory's 1959 Fender Esquire with the added neck pickup, and this one sold for £95,650. Lot 24 was a Fender Bassman from the 1950s. This iconic amp achieved £12,800. Lot number 25, the Gibson, achieved £21,760. Lot 26 was a Fender Bassman amp head, 1958. This one sold for £4,864. The next lot, lot 27, was from 1960, a Silvertone 1360 electric, and it achieved £15,360. After that, we have another Gibson Les Paul Jr., this one a double cut from 1959, and it sold for £19,200. Lot 29 was a Melody Maker from 1960. This achieved £19,200. A Harmony Stratotone Mars H46 electric from 1962 was lot number 30, and this sold for £5,760. Lot number 31 was a Gibson Melody Maker D electric from 1963. This sold for £11,520. After that, we have Rory's Gretsch Chet Atkins PX6121 electric from 1959, and this one, lot number 32, achieved £14,080. Lot 33 was a K672 Swingmaster semi-acoustic from 1960, and it sold for £7,040. After that, we have another a K1962 Value Leader electric from 1961, and this one, lot 34, sold for £14,080. Lot 35 was a Supro Coronado electric from 1960, and this one sold for £10,240. Lot 36 was a Fender Vibrolux from 1963, which achieved £7,680. Lot 37, a Gretsch Corvette electric from 1963, made £25,600. The next lot, 38, was a Fender Concert amp from 1961. This one sold for £8,960. Lot 39 was Rory's Hawk 2 tonal expander booster from the 1970s, and it made £4,480. Lot 40, Rory's Silvertone S1478L electric from 1964, sold for £7,680. Next on the block was a Teisco Del Rey TG64 electric from 1965. This one, lot 41, made £12,160. Lot 42 from the same maker, a TRE-100 electric from 1965 made £8,960, and Lot 43, an Airline JB Hutto style electric from 1965, sold for £19,200. Lot 44 was a Supro dual-tone electric from 1963. It sold for £7,040. Lot 45 was a Coral 3S19 electric sitar from 1968, and it made £11,520. Lot 46 was a Danelectro Belzuki 12-string electric guitar from the 1960s, and it sold for £6,400. The next lot, 47, was a Fender Deluxe from the 1950s, and this one achieved £12,160. After this, we had a Vox for lot number 48, and this was a 1960s AC-10 that sold for £7,040. Lot number 49 was a Mosrite Joe Maphis double neck electric from around 1968, which sold for £14,080. Next up, for lot number 50, was another highlight. This was Rory's 1966 Fender Telecaster, and it sold for £82,950. Lot 51 was the Vox Mark 12 12-string electric guitar from 1967, and this sold for £11,520. Lot 52 was a Vox Supreme amplifier from 1967, and this one made £3,840. The next lot, 53, was a Vox AC30 twin top boost amplifier, and this sold for £10,880. After that, for lot 54, we had a Stramp Custom K80 Power Baby amp together with a K81 cabinet from 1971, and for this somebody paid £8,320. Lot 55 was an Encore Les Paul Junior style electric guitar from the 1970s, and it made £7,040. A Guiatone Les Paul Junior style guitar from the early 70s was up at lot 56, and this sold for £5,760. Lot 57 was an Eccleshall custom-made electric guitar from the 1970s, and that made £6,144. Up next, lot 59 was an Eccleshall Mandola from 1972, and this fetched £9,600. Lot 60 was an Eccleshall Telecaster style guitar from the 1980s, and that made £10,240. Lot 61, another guitar by Chris Eccleshall. This was a Stratocaster style guitar from 1979, and it sold for £6,400. Next up was the one that everybody was waiting for, lot number 62. It was the 1961 Fender Strat, serial number 64351. There has been so much discussion on the internet about this guitar: who would buy it, how much it would fetch, and where it should stay. In the end, the hammer came down at £700,000, which with the buyer's premium means that £889,400 was paid. The guitar was bought by a phone bidder, which turned out to be Live Nation Gaiety Limited. The company plans to donate the guitar to the National Museum of Ireland. Next up was lot 63, a Vox AC30 top boost amplifier from the 1960s. This one sold for £25,600. That was followed by lot 64, a Dallas Rangemaster treble booster from the 1960s, and this sold for £12,800. After that, lot 65 was a Fender Twin from the 1950s, and this sold for £14,080. Lot 66 was a Fender Telecaster Deluxe from 1976. This one sold for £35,840. Next up was Rory's backup Strat from 1958, a Sunburst model with a maple neck, lot 67, sold for £127,400. Lot 68 was a Travis Bean TB500 electric from 1976, and that sold for £21,760. A Fender Super Twin from 1976 was lot 69, and this achieved £5,760. Lot 70 was an Encore Telecaster from the 1970s, which made £6,144. After that came a 1978 Fender Music Master, which made £23,040. Lot 72 was a Guitarist Rory Gallagher model from 1974, which made £10,880. For lot 73, we had an Ibanez MC500 DS from 1978, which sold for £9,600. Lot 74 was a brown flight case, which sold for £3,200. After that came lot 75, an effects board from the 70s and 80s, including an original Ibanez Tube Screamer, and that sold for £7,040. Lot 76 was an Octavia pedal from 1976 or 77, and this sold for £3,840. After that, lot 77 was a Para pedal, a PS9 from 76 or 77, and that sold for £2,560. A group of Dan Armstrong guitar effects made up lot 78, and they sold for £2,816. Lot 79 was a Marshall 2104 50-watt combo from 1978, which made £4,480. Lot 80 was another Marshall 2104 from 1980, and that fetched £4,480. A 1983 Tokai Tolbo was lot 81, and that made £6,400. Another Tokai Talbot was lot 82, and that sold for £7,040. Lot 83 was a Fender Stratocaster component guitar, probably from the 1980s, and that sold for £5,760. For lot 84, we had a Velette Citron Shark guitar from 1980, and that made £6,144. Lot 85 was a Blade R4 Stratocaster style guitar from 1988, which made £6,400. Another Blade, a Durango Standard from the 1980s, was lot 86, and that sold for £5,120. Lot 87 was a Charvel 625C electroacoustic from the 1990s, and that made £8,960. A Takamine Dreadnought electroacoustic from the 1980s was lot 88, and it sold for £12,160. Lot 89 was a Washburn Tanglewood electroacoustic from the 1980s, and this sold for £8,320. A Washburn Southside Junior VGA 15 amp from around 1990 was lot 90, and that sold for £2,816. Lot 91 was a Hohner L59 Les Paul style guitar from the 1990s, and this fetched £5,376. Lot 92 An Encore Stratocaster style guitar from the 1980s sold for £5,376. A Fender Pro Junior amp from 1994 was lot 93, and that made £7,040. The final lot was a Fender Player Stratocaster HSS electric guitar donated by Fender to benefit the Music Venue Trust. This was lot 94 and it sold for £10,000. I hope you've enjoyed seeing and hearing how much these iconic and famous instruments made. I think we can all agree that it is a wonderful thing that the 1961 Strat will remain in Ireland on view for all to enjoy.